Welcome back. The carving of the gesso during the reign of Louis XIV became far more detailed and sophisticated. The ground was frequently decorated with cross-hatching known as grain d'orge, oak grain, while the acanthus leaves were accentuated with elaborate veining, giving the carving a vibrantly modeled surface. Even the ground on which the pendant corn husks were carved was elaborated with extreme delicate punchwork, known as pointille. Cross-hatching or simple parallel strokes were called azur. The reparoo, if lacking in precision, was done with great spontaneity and skill, remember, on the pole stroke. Jean-Louis Poultre, among other designers and architects working for the court and other important patrons, developed a bold, rich, and decorative vocabulary, a visual architectural carving vocabulary. They broke from the flat strap work of the mannerist and invented designs that were once heavy, expressive, and rhythmical, and retained a sense of fantasy that is an essential component of this Baroque style. They sought to embellish all the surfaces with acanthus leaves, corn husks, volutes, and scrolls. Where the designers left off, gesso recutters carried on. They were the highly skilled artisans, allowing no surface to remain undecorated. The gilders imparted a lighter and warmer tone, transversing through the gilding, then had the red-brown bowl of the previous period. The quick application of the gold leaf resulted in another of the distinctive characteristics of gilding done during the age of Louis XIV. Frequently, there were missing pieces of gold during this gilding process. These faults in the intricacies where the jaune d'encollage, yellow size, is left apparent. So you're missing pieces of gold, and what you see in these recesses is the yellow size or the yellow bowl. One can find this yellow ochre color under breaks in the leaf from any period, but during the early years of the 18th century, the high relief of the carving combined with time pressures of work resulted in gilded objects that typically had a regular pattern of these breaks in the recesses. As in the Louis XVIII period, Louis XV period, most of the gilded surfaces were burnished. However, gilded surfaces on objects made during the reign of Louis XIV were broken up by more sophisticated recutting, so the burnishing was more detailed, achieving a more interesting juxtaposition reflection of the light. As the 17th century waned, Louis XIV himself initiated the departure from the style that bears his name by asking the architect Jules Mansart for a more youthful design for the next court coming. The royal shift from formal grandeur to a more relaxed and intimate style of social interaction requires a lighter decorative art style. Furniture was reduced to a more human scale, and people brought chairs forward from the walls to form groups for conversations. Relaxation of etiquette in court, in turn, encouraged the development of new furniture forms. The canapé, or sofa, and the bergère, or armchair, that had shallow arm supports, allowing for the wide skirts that the most fashionable women, most affluent women of the day wore. And this was also upholstered under the arms. The moving of the court from Versailles back to Paris in 1715 signaled the advent of a new style, replacing the stiff architectural designs with those better suited to a softer, more animated look. The Régence period, Regency, bridged the solemnity of the Baroque style and the lyricism of the Rococo by holding on to the notion of symmetry, while adding such design elements of volute scrolls, gadrooning, and that encouraged sophisticated reparoo. In the context of stylistic developments, it is necessary to introduce the organization of crafts in France. Since the Middle Ages, the production of carved and gilded furniture frames and boiserie, which is wall paneling, had depended on several professional operations, or guilds, which had consistently regrouped or relaxed or tightened their restrictions on their respective trades. In Paris, during the early 18th century, The chair makers belonged to the Comité des Menuisiers Ébénisterie, who worked principally in the Quartier de Bonne Nouvelle, near the port of Saint-Denis. Trade was dominated by family dynasties in France for almost 2,000 years. There were subdivisions within each corporation. Chairs, for example, were made by a menuisier en siège, whereas a wall-mounted console table, a frame, or a wall panel was made by a menuisier en bâtiment. The finished carvings on these products, however, were done by the sculptor-carver. So all the different styles of furniture were made by a separate genre of hand in Paris. Beside the professional corporations, the menuisiers or carpenters of 18th century Paris belonged to the confrérie, the brotherhood, the corporation, the guild, a religiously orientated charitable institution that protected members and their families from misfortune. Between the corporations and confrérie, the menuisiers were closely associated, legislated, and protected. Becoming a mayor, menuisier en siège, as the master of the chair-making shop was known, was, however, a long and withdrawal process, taking years and years of honing one's skills. Boys wanting to enter the trade had first to serve a 6-year apprenticeship, for which the families had to pay. Then they worked for 3 years as journeymen, ultimately becoming first compagnon or contremaître. After these 3 years, they earned the privilege of presenting a chef d'oeuvre or masterpiece to the guild jury and then pay an initiation fee. The fee paid to the royal treasury depended on the family connections. A well-connected insider paid considerably less than a foreigner to get into the guild or to be a freeman. These guilds were clearly exclusive and restrictive in their practices. In 1725, the Corporations des Menuisiers Ébénistes had 895 mailleurs, of whom 250 were menuisiers. There are two ways that a chairmaker could circumvent guild regulations. The most prestigious was to gain an appointment to work for the king as an artisan, privileged droit. The other way was to operate as an ouvrier libre, a free workman, at one of several legally protected sites in the city of Paris. Because ouvrier libre worked without guild control, they could work more cheaply, and thus were held in high contempt by the other menuisiers.